What if I told you that the Second Amendment just scored a major victory, but that victory is only the beginning? President Trump has just issued an executive order aimed at rolling back years of unconstitutional gun control, and while that's great news, there's still a long way to go. The question is, how much of this can actually be done with the stroke of a pen? What does this order really change, and what battles still need to be fought? Today, I'm going to break it all down, from the immediate impacts to the long-term implications for every gun owner in America. For years, we've watched as the federal government has chipped away at our gun rights, often under the guise of public safety. Whether it was the ATF redefining what makes a firearm illegal, the Biden administration enforcing unconstitutional executive actions, or states like Illinois and California outright banning entire classes of weapons, the Second Amendment has been under attack from every angle. Now, for the first time in years, we're seeing a major shift in the opposite direction. President Trump's executive order directs the Attorney General to review all federal rules, regulations, and policies from 2021 through 2025 that have infringed on our right to keep and bear arms. That means looking at everything the ATF has done, every restriction placed on gun owners, and every lawsuit the federal government has been involved in, then deciding what can be undone immediately. This order isn't just symbolic. It has the potential to reverse some of the most aggressive attacks on the Second Amendment we've ever seen. But as we've learned before, executive orders can only go so far, and there's a lot of work left to do if we want to see real permanent change. So what exactly does this executive order do? In simple terms, it forces a full review of every rule, regulation, and legal case tied to the Second Amendment from 2021 to 2025. That means the Department of Justice, including the ATF, has 30 days to examine every action that may have restricted gun rights and present a plan to undo the damage. Let's talk specifics. First, this order targets the rules implemented under Biden's ATF that directly impacted gun owners. That includes the ban on pistol braces, the restrictions on forced reset triggers, and the so-called zero-tolerance policy that shut down small gun dealers over minor paperwork errors. These were not laws passed by Congress. They were unilateral decisions made by unelected bureaucrats. That's why they can be reversed just as easily, and Trump is demanding action within a month. Then there's the issue of ammunition imports. Under Biden, the ATF and State Department changed the rules on Form 6 approvals, making it nearly impossible to import certain types of ammo. That directly affected the supply chain, making ammunition more expensive and less available for the average gun owner. This executive order puts those restrictions under review, meaning we could see immediate relief in ammo prices if those changes are reversed. Another major focus is the federal government's involvement in ongoing Second Amendment lawsuits. Under Biden, the Department of Justice was actively defending unconstitutional gun laws in court, arguing in favor of bans on so-called ghost guns, restrictions on homemade firearms, and redefinitions of what constitutes a firearm. Trump's order calls for a complete review of the government's legal positions, and if it's taken seriously, we could see the DOJ stop defending these laws entirely, possibly even reversing its stance in some cases. And then there's the bigger question: how far can this order really go? While executive orders can't overturn federal laws like the National Firearms Act or the Gun Control Act of 1968, they can significantly weaken the enforcement of these laws. That means if the DOJ refuses to prosecute certain cases or stops enforcing ATF rulings, gun owners could see fewer restrictions and more freedom, at least until Congress steps in to make permanent changes. This is a huge step in the right direction, but it's just the beginning. Now that we know what's in the executive order, we need to look at how it could change things in the real world and where we still need to fight. Now that we know what's in the executive order, the big question is, what does this mean for gun owners right now? The good news is that several Biden-era restrictions could be reversed almost immediately. Some of these rules were put in place through executive action rather than congressional law, meaning they can be undone just as easily. One of the biggest areas of impact is the pistol brace ban. If you remember, the ATF reclassified millions of braced pistols as short-barreled rifles, making legal owners potential felons overnight unless they registered their firearms under the NFA. This order forces the DOJ to reassess that rule, and if handled correctly, it could mean an end to the ATF's overreach on pistol braces. No forced registrations, no arbitrary reclassifications, just restoring what was always legal in the first place. Then there's the issue of forced reset triggers. The ATF went after these by falsely labeling them as machine guns, even though they function nothing like one. This led to companies getting raided, inventory being seized, and law-abiding citizens being criminally charged. Now, with this executive order in place, the DOJ has the opportunity to drop these cases, return seized property, and issue new guidance clarifying that these triggers are, in fact, legal. Ammo imports are another area that could see immediate relief. The Biden administration weaponized Form 6 approvals to cut off access to foreign ammunition sources, driving up prices and limiting availability. That wasn't a law passed by Congress. It was a bureaucratic decision made by unelected officials. Now, Trump's order directs the DOJ to reassess these import restrictions, meaning that gun owners could soon see cheaper and more widely available ammunition. And let's not forget about the ATF's zero-tolerance policy against FFLs. Under Biden, small gun dealers were being shut down for minor paperwork mistakes, things like a single digit being transposed on a background check form. This was never about public safety. It was about cutting off legal access to firearms. Trump's order forces the DOJ to review this policy, and if reversed, it would restore thousands of small FFLs that were unfairly targeted and shut down. These are just some of the immediate changes that could come from this order. But beyond these quick fixes, there are much bigger questions about what else could be reversed. That's where things get even more interesting. While the executive order focuses on rolling back Biden-era restrictions, the real question is, how far can this go? Could this be the beginning of a larger push to dismantle decades of unconstitutional gun control? If Trump's administration is serious about restoring Second Amendment rights, there's a lot more that can be done. One of the biggest targets should be the 1986 Firearms Owners Protection Act. While that law did include some pro-gun provisions, it also banned the sale of new machine guns to civilians. The law still allows for amnesty periods where unregistered NFA items, like suppressors, short-barreled rifles, and even machine guns, could be legally registered without penalties. Congress already authorized these amnesty periods decades ago, yet only one has ever been enacted. Trump could use this executive authority to declare another amnesty period, allowing law-abiding gun owners to come forward and legally register items that have been passed down through families. Then there's the Gun Control Act of 1968. This law established the modern firearm serialization system and created unnecessary restrictions on who can buy and sell firearms. But what most people don't realize is that much of what we consider federal gun law today isn't even in the statute. It's based on ATF opinions and interpretations. For example, vertical foregrips on pistols are banned under ATF guidance, not actual law. Pistol braces were legal for years until the ATF suddenly changed its mind. Forced reset triggers were reclassified based on an arbitrary interpretation, not legislation. The president can order the DOJ to stop enforcing these opinion-based restrictions, effectively rendering them meaningless. Another massive issue is the ATF's constant reclassification of firearms and accessories. They've been doing this for decades, stretching the definitions of laws far beyond their original intent. One of the worst examples is the ATF's attempt to redefine what constitutes a firearms frame or receiver. For decades, the lower receiver of an AR-15 was considered the firearm under federal law, but suddenly, the ATF decided to change that definition, targeting 80% receivers and homemade firearms. These restrictions weren't created by Congress, and they can be reversed just as easily. The bottom line is that this executive order is just the start. If Trump wants to truly restore the Second Amendment, he needs to go further. That means stopping the ATF from enforcing arbitrary rules, ending unconstitutional classifications, and rolling back decades of gun control that was never passed by Congress in the first place. One of the biggest challenges in restoring the Second Amendment is dealing with state-level restrictions. While Trump's executive order can roll back federal regulations, it doesn't automatically override gun control laws in states like California, New York, or Illinois. The ATF and the DOJ don't make state laws, and that means certain restrictions, like so-called assault weapon bans or magazine capacity limits, are still in effect unless challenged in court. But here's where things get interesting. While Trump can't strike down state laws himself, his administration can stop defending them. Right now, several major Second Amendment cases are moving through the courts, And under Biden, the DOJ actively fought to uphold restrictive gun laws. That means taxpayer dollars were being spent to defend unconstitutional bans and regulations at both the state and federal levels. Trump's executive order changes that. It directs the DOJ to review all ongoing Second Amendment litigation and determine whether the federal government should continue supporting these laws. If they stop defending them, the odds of these cases succeeding in court skyrocket. Another major factor is how the Supreme Court handles these challenges. In recent years, we've seen landmark rulings like Bruin, which struck down New York's restrictive concealed carry law. That case alone has set off a chain reaction of lawsuits challenging state-level gun bans. If the DOJ reverses its position and refuses to fight these challenges, we could see entire categories of gun control laws get struck down at the federal level. This is a major opportunity, but it depends on whether the Trump administration is willing to follow through and actively support gun rights in the courts rather than simply rolling back executive orders. One of the most dangerous things to come out of the Biden administration was the expansion of the federal gun registry. Technically, the government isn't supposed to have a searchable database of firearm owners. Federal law explicitly bans the creation of a national registry. But we all know that's not stopping them. Under Biden, the ATF made changes to Form 4473, the background check form every gun buyer fills out at an FFL. The new version requires more personal information, and instead of keeping firearm details separate, everything is now on the front page. That makes it easier to scan and store in a searchable format. Add in the fact that many dealers are required to submit photocopies of IDs along with these forms, and suddenly, you've got an illegal gun registry hiding in plain sight. And it gets worse. Reports have surfaced showing that the ATF has already used facial recognition software to track gun owners. During the Pennsylvania shooting incident involving Trump, the ATF allegedly ran facial scans to identify the firearm's previous owner. That's not speculation. It was leaked through congressional inquiries. This is exactly why registries are dangerous. Once the government has the data, it will use it. Trump's executive order should go further. Not only should these expanded Form 4473 requirements be reversed, but the illegal registry itself should be dismantled. The ATF has no business maintaining records on American gun owners. Those databases should be wiped clean immediately. The ATF was never meant to be a militarized agency targeting law-abiding gun owners. It started as a tax enforcement division, but over the years it has transformed into an armed federal force that routinely oversteps its boundaries. Under Biden, we saw an escalation in ATF raids, increased enforcement against gun dealers, and an aggressive push to redefine common firearm accessories as illegal. That needs to change. One of the biggest problems is the ATF's lack of accountability. Unlike local law enforcement, ATF agents are not required to wear body cameras. That means when they raid a home, execute a warrant, or conduct an operation, there's no record of what really happened. If local police departments, many of them in small towns, are required to wear body cams, why is a federal agency exempt? If Trump is serious about reforming the ATF, requiring body cameras for all armed federal agents should be a top priority. Another issue is the ATF's use of excessive force. We've seen cases where they kick in doors, seize firearms without due process, and treat legal gun owners like criminals. If this administration truly wants to restore Second Amendment rights, the ATF needs to be stripped of its ability to create and enforce laws outside of what Congress has passed. Their power should be reduced to nothing more than what they were originally designed for: tax enforcement. Anything beyond that is government overreach at its worst. With this executive order in place, the next 30 days are going to be critical. The Department of Justice has been given a deadline to review every rule, regulation, and enforcement action that may have infringed on the Second Amendment. But the real question is, will they follow through? Will we actually see the ATF and DOJ roll back these restrictions, or will they drag their feet and hope this all gets forgotten? What needs to happen is simple. First, the DOJ must immediately rescind unconstitutional ATF rulings, especially on pistol braces, forced reset triggers, and ammunition import restrictions. Second, they need to halt all legal challenges against gun rights in court. No more using taxpayer dollars to fight against the Second Amendment. Third, they should begin dismantling the illegal gun registry by wiping out the massive database of scanned 4,473 forms and stopping any efforts to track firearm owners through facial recognition. Of course, none of this happens without pressure. Bureaucrats don't like change and they don't like giving up power. If gun owners want to see real results, they need to keep the pressure on. Contacting representatives, supporting pro-gun legal battles, and staying vocal about the Second Amendment are all crucial. If we stay silent, the same people who pushed for these restrictions will work behind the scenes to keep them in place. This executive order is a massive step in the right direction, but it's only the beginning of the fight. The fight for gun rights isn't over. This executive order is a huge win, but now is not the time to get complacent. We need to keep pushing, keep demanding action, and make sure these unconstitutional restrictions don't just get ignored. What's the biggest gun law or restriction you want to see overturned next? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to stay updated on Second Amendment news that the mainstream media won't cover, make sure to subscribe. The battle for our rights is ongoing, and I'll be here breaking it all down every step of the way. Stay armed, stay informed, and I'll see you in the next one.